And welcome everybody to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, and I'm the Chief Sales Architect and author of Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Here on this show, we believe that hope is not a sales strategy, and so we're here to increase the performance of people and the results of their teams and the performance of their pipelines. Now, this Bulletproof Selling series that we have, it shares insights from the top minds in sales, best-selling authors, speakers, trainers, and of course, those that are actually out there in the field managing their sales teams. And my commitment out of every single show that we do is that we will build a sales system with our guests that we can use across the world of sales, no matter the size of our business or the size of our goals. So I'm very excited to be welcoming Ingo Heiland today. He's with a company called LISSMAC, and they've suffered from something that a lot of salespeople have suffered from in the last year. We're going to dive into that, talk a little bit about how his team has helped to solve that for their customers. So Ingo, please welcome to the show, sir. Very excited to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your company so we can find out a little bit about you.
Thank you, Sean. Sean, first of all, yes, thank you that you're having me. About me, I learned pretty early in my career that I'm not designed to sit on a computer and work with drawings. So I switched over into sales, and I'm into sales since 24, 25, whatever, many years.
Many years.
Worked my way from a territory sales rep up to a general manager of a small company, and then I got the offer to run the LISSMAC subsidiary in the United States, and I, as venturous how I am, I took the challenge and moved to America. And I'm doing this since 10 years, and we grew from 2 people to 21 employees that I have right now.
Wow.
And we are doing sales of the machine that our parent company produces, and we import them from Germany. And we also started 2 years our own line of machine that we manufacture over here, assemble over here, and sell out to the American market.
And now the machines that you're building, Ingo, are not off the shelf kind of things, are they? I mean, there's a longer sales cycle. It requires a little more investment in time. Talk to us a little bit about the sales cycle that your folks actually have to deal with now. And I know it's changed a little bit, but how does it look today?
Well, the sales cycle it's wide open. I mean, we have the spontaneous decisions that come up with an order that suddenly a customer need to fulfill the requirements of his customer. So he needs the machine to do the right job of edge rounding the bearing, and he needed the machine right away. That's the reason why we try to have machines in stock. But the general sales cycle, it's between 6 months and 3 years. I mean, it's a budgetary machine. We talk about easily between 150 to 300,000. And what we are facing with our machines, it's at the end of the production line. You can't work without a good laser to cut. You can't work without welding equipment, but you still can do the grinding, deburring by hand. So it is in the budget, but sometimes it's pushed back because there are some needs. But if the decision is made, it's then we deliver the best product for this kind of application.
And so not only are your salespeople then dealing with something that people don't have to put at the top priority of their budget, right? I mean, obviously it's going to be much easier. And if I have to scale my production out, eventually I'm going to need a machine. I can't just have 50 people there burring stuff by hand. But for a smaller company, it's like, I got to decide, do I want to invest in manpower or people power? Do I want to invest in one of your machines? And I really have to weigh the cost benefit analysis in that to make that decision as a purchaser, a potential customer. So that's one area that I know is a challenge. Another area that we had talked about was the fact that a lot of sales leaders are dealing with this in the midst of COVID, where you mentioned, having to keep some machines in stock because the customer expectation is you're just got this stuff sitting on a warehouse shelf and you can pack it up, pallet it up and deliver it to me. But that's not actually the case in a time when this supply chain kind of accordion effect is happening around the world. How are your folks experiencing that? And I'd love to hear a little bit about what you've discovered they're using to deal with it.
I mean, we try to play with our persistence at the customer. We try to and the personal relationship, we build up an honest relationship, an honest win-win situation with the customer that we try to accomplish. And we say right away that our delivery time is X weeks. And we, as soon as we got from our shipping companies notice that there is a delay, we also forward this delay to the customer.
Right.
And not a happy message that you transfer, but at least we try to be straightforward, and we don't like to mess around and say, well, this is the delay. We immediately play straightforward our messages and our delivery times. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. I mean, I get information that even little steel component spare parts have 6-7 weeks delivery time. We got order confirmations for machines for October. This is a long cycle. If you decide to go for a machine, to wait for it, and we have machines in stock that we try to analyze what the customer need is beforehand. So we try to get machines in, and we are willing to help out with a demo machine or try to keep the customer happy and in the loop. Yeah. And there comes the hope. I mean, we hope that there are no delays, because that is out of our hand. And then the supply chain is an issue as of right now. Absolutely.
And I know that we talked about, your salespeople doing the best that they could to communicate as soon as they know, hey, there might be a holdup. I promised you a 4-week delivery time. Now it's looking like 8, 12, 16 weeks. And I know that's just one of the issues where hope might enter the picture. So for you to grow your team from just a couple of people to almost 24 now, I imagine you probably had to let some people go along the way. Not every salesperson is really meant to work out in sales. That's been my experience. So I'd love to know, in your decades in the sales world, so across all of your experience in your lifetime, where have you found salespeople relying on hope a little more than they should?
Well, it's more in the daily business. I think the daily business is where the hope comes in. You have the hope that a cold call customer pick up the phone, accept the phone, accept the first introduction. That's where the hope is there. But good salespeople put this first initial hope away and then work with the facts, work with the given arguments like technical stuff and or advantage that you have in speed or rugged construction or actually the solution for the customer. We are trying to, and this is what I do with every sales person that we have in the house. We more like to educate than to sell. Sure. We like to educate about or analyze the issue or the solution that the customer need to have, and then we educate him about the right machine. And there are not few cases that I said, well, we do not have the right machine for you.
Yeah,
I'm not selling a machine that is not right. And yes, there is a hope for the numbers to fulfill the numbers, and there is a hope to get an order, but we try to accomplish a very honest educational base.
And I know that you and I had chatted about the background that I had. Obviously, you've gotten to read Bulletproof Selling, so it's going to be no surprise to you. But the thing that allowed all of these teams that I was studying around the world to not have to rely on hope was because they had systems. They had great training, they were educated, and they were always educating each other, as you mentioned. And so in the world of sales, those systems really divert back to something that's outside of our heads, something we don't have to try and remember when we've got 20 calls to make today. 4 prospect visits we've got to drive to now that we're finally allowed to visit people in the office. I mean, hope can definitely enter the picture, but we're trying to keep it at bay. And so I know you and I had chatted about the way that you were leveraging your systems, your CRM, to help your salespeople kind of remove that hope a little more. What have you found to be the most successful thing that your salespeople are doing in leveraging their systems today, now that we're all beginning to move out of COVID and into a world that looks a little bit more like it did before? How are the systems really coming into play for you right now?
Well, the system keeps you persistent. I mean, this is, you can't remember every call and you can't remember every customer. So you need to have a system. And if it's a CRM or a notepad or something in between, you need to have a system that you can follow up and schedule your daily routine. And just being a good sales rep means for me straightforward, honest, and hardworking. Hardworking is a key factor. You have to do calls and you have to do cold calls, and then nobody like to do cold calls, but it's part of the job to find new customers, fill up the pipeline, and then you do what you have to do. And if, that's the only point of hope that I'm seeing in the sales cycle, is hoping that a customer picks up the phone.
And that's the chief challenge of a lot of us. I know, when I'm making sales calls, that's my hope too. And even like whether to leave a voicemail message or do I leave a message or how long is it, all this stuff begins to factor in, can really be overwhelming. But the fact that we're reaching out to people that might be qualified buyers or that are qualified because we've taken the time to pre-qualify them, that makes such a massive difference behind just waiting for the phone to ring. And so you mentioned something that I'd love to dive into. You mentioned the word pipeline. And so a lot of people that we talk with, a lot of sales leaders I get to work with, when I go into their organization, all they've got is a funnel, if that. And their funnel often is unique salesperson to salesperson, and that, Bob's funnel is going to be different than Sally's funnel as far as what steps are within the funnel, how many calls I need to make in a day to convert X number of people down as customers at the bottom. But you mentioned pipeline. So I'd love to dive into that because I know you and I think very similarly about pipeline, and you've heard definitely my version of a pipeline where it's not just one funnel, 5 steps and then they're out. It's keeping these people in play over time. So when we talk about being consistent with our prospect, they may not pick up today, but they might respond to that email message I send next week or that LinkedIn connection request I send 2 weeks later. So how have your people really found pipelines to be helpful for them in maintaining that consistency?
Well, the pipeline is what we are trying to achieve with an order. This is our pipeline. Our pipeline is based on calls and there where I separate between funnel and pipeline. Yeah. You do a ton of calls, but if you have done a demo with a customer, run sample parts, have a quote out for the machine, analyzed the need, then it goes from the funnel into the pipeline. And the pipeline is sometimes it's long pipeline for a sales cycle, and sometimes it's pays back pretty quick when the right order comes in and luckily we have the right machine in stock. That is for me, it's a pipeline. And every of my sales representatives have this kind of pipeline and have their way to maintain it. And there are differences, like you said, in sales rep A has a different understanding of the pipeline than sales rep B and C. So there are differences in the pipeline and in the percentage to order. But it's a understanding, and the pipeline is the key to keep the sales reps on track.
And you mentioned something that I think would be really valuable for us to dive into. It goes along with consistency, and
Yes.
that is being consistent in how we might deliver bad news to a prospect or a customer. So, something we focus on a lot is even getting the conversation, but whether we promise a prospect, we're going to get you a quote out, it's going to, contain these 10 things because that's what they wanted, or it's somebody that's even placed an order. They're about to become a customer, but like you mentioned, we got to tell them, hey, that part isn't even going to be available to us until October. So, delivering bad news is sometimes the role of a salesperson in addition to delivering great news. Hey, we can fulfill that order early, right? That's a beautiful piece of news. But if we have to deliver bad news, I think this would be great to deliver a system around for everybody that's listening, because I know you're an expert in it, not because your company can't deliver on time, but just because there's a supply chain issue. Like you said, it's out of our control sometimes.
Yeah.
And in the world of service delivery, which is the world that I come out of, I can only be in one place at a time. So if you need me to be in Las Vegas and you need me to be in Orlando on the same day, that's an issue. I got to deliver bad news to somebody. So it happens to all of us, whether we're delivering services or building great machines or delivering great machines. So let's talk about building that into something that people can use consistently, because it is going to have to happen occasionally. Bad news has to be delivered. Let's make sure we do this in a way that helps us retain that prospect, or make sure that that customer understands we still have their best interest at heart. So we talk about building systems here at Bulletproof Selling. We use the acronym TRIM because we're trying to trim hope away from our sales strategy. So the T in TRIM is a trigger. Where would you recommend somebody start with this system? In that, I need a trigger element to say, all right, I need to put the system into play. And so if for you, is it learning that you're not going to be able to deliver on your delivery commitments? Is it learning that you have to let a prospect know that a part is back ordered? What is the trigger for your salespeople most often in knowing, hey, I've got to deliver some bad news?
Well, the trigger should be right at the beginning. I mean, right in the pipeline, we try to communicate with the customer. If it's a good news or a bad news, or we try to stay on top and not getting the question about the machine or the product. We like to be proactive and continue our communication with the customer or the potential customer, and then say, well, dear customer, we have good news. We got an order confirmation for this machine for this and this date. And then the next step would be, dear customer, I'm very sorry. Here is a document from the shipping company. We just got a notice that it's a 1 week delay on the ship. And then you go again and you talk. And this personal relationship should be maintained by not the sales relationship, it's a personal relationship that I like to have the sales reps doing. And I remember, maybe you have the time for this little story. It was actually in my first year of sales that I had a customer. It was in the construction industry, and it was for concrete form working. And there were this wood sheet that you use for the form work. And I learned from my boss actually that the quality is not good. And I had in my pocket an order for a good amount of money and a good sum. And we had issues with the order, with getting this order out because the quality was not right. And I called up the customer and said, well, dear customer, we can't deliver this thing, not in time. And the quality, honestly, the quality is not in the way that we like to sell our products. I would recommend looking for something else. I mean, very honestly, he almost kicked me out. He kicked me out. And then something like 2 months later, he called me and said, well, he got this product through a different way and learned it's not functional. And he got stuck up with this sheets for the form work. And he called me up and said, Ingo, thank you for being this honest and not trying to sell me this piece of crap. Because that means something. So the next order goes right away to you because I know that you're playing honest and straightforward. And then this is what I took in and play all my sales life, being honest and playing right away with the facts.
I love the fact that you've involved in the trigger even before the sale is made, before the proposal is issued. If you have knowledge that you might have to deliver bad news, get it done sooner rather than later. And it's amazing that you also use it as an opportunity to deepen the relationship. So it doesn't sound like this is something that you're advising your salespeople to do via email, some generic message that's, hey, sorry, we're not going to be able to deliver it to you. Let me know if you'd like to stay in touch. No, it's a phone call. It's a personal touch. It's a relationship building activity, even though you're delivering bad news. That's amazing. So we got the trigger built. Now, the second part of this acronym in TRIM is making this thing repeatable. And so as a salesperson, I got a lot to manage. I'm spinning 50 plates. I got to make a lot of calls, send a lot of emails, maintain my pipeline. And I find that there's maybe one or two cases where I've got to deliver some bad news. I want to be able to do this in a consistent way. So that way I can at least track, is this thing working? Not just hope that I remember I actually have to pick up the phone this time and not send an email or a letter. So how would you advise your salespeople make this thing repeatable, in that it's a system that lives outside of their heads, in their CRMs, on a sheet of paper, in a checklist? How would you advise that they do that so they don't have to remember the steps?
Well, I don't like the word templates, but you should track your action and how you start a conversation, how your role play or your intro, and then this is the same thing with the bad news. I mean, don't mess around. And this is maybe my German heritage. We are a little bit more straightforward, and we can say sometimes a really straight no, or we go for it and just tell the truth and point out the thing, and that is how I try to give this influence also on to my sales team, and the sales team is, in my opinion, excellent, and they are doing really an outstanding job, and they all do it in the right way.
I love it. So to make this, this phone call, to get that out the door, and then I imagine to always maintain a follow-up activity outside of your head, either in a calendar, in a CRM. The system, this is often a confusing thing for sales teams. It doesn't have to be an 18-step process. A very simple system could just be phone call, make a note in your CRM or in your calendar that you want to reach back out and give them an update. I quoted 12 weeks. I'm going to push it as hard as I can for you to get it in earlier, but I'll definitely reach out to you in 2 weeks just to give you an update. And just to maintain that relationship. So it could be a very simple, repeatable system like that.
Yes.
So the third part of this acronym is making this thing improvable. That's the I. And so how would you advise that your salespeople improve the way that they deliver bad news? Because I imagine that when you started delivering bad news, you do it differently now than you did back then, in that you're able to maintain the relationship better. So how would you advise your team to make this thing improvable, in that they are able to capture more customers even though they're delivering bad news?
Learning out of what the customer is saying and how the customer is reacting. It's listening and accepting the customer reaction and filtering out the personal experience out of it and the learning curve. I mean, we learn every day and we learn continuously, and with every bad news that a sales rep is bringing to a customer, he learns a little step more what to say, how to say it, how to start a conversation. I learned a lot about Americans and to deal with an American culture and how different it is and then the German culture, and so I'm confident that my sales team, they are know that they are learning, and we have every Monday morning we have a sales meeting, a Zoom sales meeting. That is what came up with through the pandemic. We get more and more into a routine. Everybody is learning how to present his pipeline and what's going on and the exchange. This is actually the good thing that came out of the pandemic. This Zoom and being capable to learn on a short notice from each other, and we talk very open about, well, what would you do in this case? What would you do in this case?
Right.
And the team, and we comment and bring our statements, and then how the actual sales rep is doing it, it is his decision.
Right.
But
Right.
I hope he will learn from his way and improve his sales or his behavior.
And often the toughest piece with any sales team is just getting people to be willing to be open and vulnerable enough to share those problems. Because I know as salespeople, we only want to present the best because that's kind of how we interact in our lives. We're usually fairly positive people. Not a lot of negative salespeople make a bunch of sales. So we got to be positive. But the problem that comes in a team with that is if during our weekly meetings or our check-ins with our management, we only talk about the great things, well, that doesn't allow us to improve as individuals. And it definitely holds the rest of the team back, because that junior salesperson, if I can save them the heartache that I'm suffering through this week, because they learn what I'm doing to solve a problem so they can not have to deal with that problem at all in 2 months when they might encounter it. Wow, what a powerful thing for a sales team. So it's awesome that you're doing that, making it improvable by bringing it up, actually talking about it. So the final piece to this then in this TRIM acronym is making it measurable. And so I want to know, is the system that I'm using to deliver bad news actually delivering me the result that I'm after, which is client retention? Even if I can't make them a client today, they're still going to remain a prospect, that they're willing to have a conversation with me, and they're not upset just because I had to, tell them, hey, I can't deliver that till October. So how would you advise that your salespeople measure the results of a very basic thing like this, like delivering bad news, to make sure that it's actually yielding LISSMAC the result that you want?
It is, again, there is a persistence, and if someone is in the pipeline, even if I would say dropped to the back of the pipeline, you still need to keep contact, and then you need to call and just chat and ask how you are and how the business is going, and just be persistent and hardworking and continue the relationship that you started. And there's nothing wrong with having a personal relationship with the customer who decided to go for a competitive machine. There's nothing wrong with that. You should continue and check in. I hate the word check in.
I know.
Ask how the customer is, and be a good person.
Yeah, even if they don't become a customer, even if they buy from your competitor, measure how many of these folks continue to maintain a relationship with you, because that's really going to be the benchmark. They're probably going to need your machine again, unless the machines in your industry have like an 80-year lifespan, which I don't know of a machine that does. So they're probably going to need another one, or a replacement part, or they're going to upgrade. And if you maintain the relationship because you were willing to deliver the bad news, like that story you told us, people do tend to come back around because they want to work with people with integrity, honesty, and that are willing to deliver bad news early rather than drawing it out and making me have to work harder because you thought you'd just avoid the trouble, right?
Yes.
So that's amazing. That's a great system, Ingo. So, to wrap up here, to give people an idea about where can they find more out about you. I know you're active on LinkedIn. I know you're probably willing to accept connections there, but how do we find out more about you and your company for the folks that are interested in diving deeper?
Well, I'm active on LinkedIn with under Ingo Heiland, and to learn more about our company, it would be the webpage www.get the LISSMAC Edge together. That's our company webpage, and email me, contact me, try to get on LinkedIn with me, connected, and I'm happy to answer questions and get in touch with people.
That's great, Ingo. Well, thank you so much for joining us and delivering a great sales system that, is really something that we have to do as salespeople. Bad news has to be delivered. Now we have a way to get that done consistently, measurably, and make sure that we improve it. So for all of the listeners out there, make sure that you are following us here at Bulletproof Selling on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And of course, for the podcast that we produce out of these episodes, catch that on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. So for the systems around sales to help you replace hope with certainty, get better pipeline performance, performance, make sure you're checking out the resources that we're constantly posting at www.bulletproof-selling.com. Sean Rhodes here. It has been a pleasure serving you alongside Ingo Heiland. Ingo, let's go out there and make selling bulletproof.
Thank you. Bye.